Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Jacob Licklider here. A day late again, just because I just didn't have time on Sunday to watch the episode. But these are my initial reactions to the penultimate episode of Doctor Who Flux, Survivors of the Flux, written by Chris Chibnall. Now, okay, there are obviously going to be spoilers here, so if you have not watched the episode yet, I'd actually recommend going to do that, even if this might actually be my most negative review this series, which is kind of interesting, because Chibnall had been doing so well. So go watch that and go watch the episode and then come back here. Because, oddly enough, this episode has a lot of problems, mainly whenever it's dealing with the actual timeless child stuff. Because this is like part one of the big reveal about what it all is now. Yeah, okay, I didn't particularly like the timeless child. Not because I don't necessarily think it's an interesting idea. It could be, but it's as an episode, it's really bogged down by just the fact that it is an entire episode full of exposition. Like the entire episode of The Timeless Children it's exposition. That's all it all it is, all it is, the master explaining this whole secret history of what turns out to be the Doctor. And Chris Chibnall actually seems to be trying to have his cake and eat it too. I don't particularly like both sides in an argument, but there's very much this whole idea with the Timeless Children that both sides have a point. Like, the idea that the Doctor has been, was raised as, being tortured and exploited doesn't make her a god. But this episode here, when she meets Tecteun, Tecteun's basically afraid of her because of how much she inspires people, and she inspires the universe, and is moral grandstanding that just makes the Doctor sort of that Jesus figure, like the beacon of hope who's going to save the day, which is honestly something I don't particularly like about the Doctor. The Doctor in my view, works best when they are a character who is just a wanderer who helps out when they can. Yes, that leads... My favorite incarnation, of course, is McCoy, who's, the Master Manipulator. My favorite area is the Virgin New Adventures, where the Doctor, is a big player in the universe and always has a plan, but he's not a figure of hope in that series. A lot of that series is a deconstruction of what kind of happens if you make the Doctor a god, and that's not a good thing. A lot of people seem to make this Tecteun plotline out to be sort of Chris Chibnall's version of Lungbarrow, which is patently false. Lungbarrow as a book is not a story about Looms the Other and the House of... Well, it is a story about Looms and the Other. It's a story about the Doctor and his family. It is a murder mystery that the Doctor ran away after essentially the patriarch of the family, Quences, was murdered, with the Doctor as prime suspect number one. He was getting away also to see the universe because he didn't approve of his stuffy Time Lord family, because they were very much the bureaucrats at the House of Lungbarrow. And at its heart, Lungbarrow is a murder mystery and sort of the culmination and endings of several character arcs. This is just... Ooh, look at this weird thing. The Division wants to end the universe because the Doctor's in it. But also we're going to the next universe and bringing the Doctor along? Question mark? Yeah, Tecteun is a character. Barbara Flynn is a great actress. I like the way she plays it. She does a lot of interesting acting choices. But the writing itself has this big problem of making her switch her ideas and morality on a dime. There's also this really dope speech about morality being strength, which, I guess, but also everyone has a sense of morality, even if they're not a good person. Like, Chibnall, that doesn't work. Like, morality isn't fixed. It's not. It's fairly relative to the individual, and society agrees upon what is morally good and what's morally bad, and it shifts and changes, and that's very much something that I think Chris Chibnall just doesn't seem to... He seems to be a very moral absolutist, and it's also very weird, because the 13th Doctor's morality itself has been very fluid and weird. Like, this is a character who let a spider die in a painful death, when actually shooting a spider and putting it out as misery would have probably been the morally correct decision. It is, very much a... and it also falls into the plot of here's more exposition about the Division. And honestly, I don't particularly like the Division as, like, a concept, really. They're the Celestial Intervention Agency. Like, that's what they are. They don't call it the Celestial Intervention Agency, but that's what they are. And, the CIA has first got mentioned in The Deadly Assassin and has been mentioned at whispers throughout the show. Which I think is, like, I get it, you don't necessarily want to bring in Big Finish stuff, but when you really just make an idea of, like, let's do the Celestial Intervention Agency, but call it the Division, and oddly enough not connect it to the Time War, because oddly enough, I think if Chibnall connected this whole idea to the Time War changing the past and creating the Division, that might actually work a little bit better, and actually help continue the threads of the Time War being a war throughout time that, absolutely changes things, because whenever we saw it on television, honestly, it's always quite a shame, because it always just turned into Daleks and Time Lords shooting at each other, or whatever the hell the end of time was, which wasn't really a time war. It was Timothy Dalton spitting all over the place and just shouting a lot. It's not the best thing. And honestly, every time we cut back to the Doctor and Tecteun, I'm like, can we go back to the other stuff, please? Because the other stuff in the story's really fun. There are 2 plot lines going here that would make a great Dr. Light story. The Doctor's only involvement needs to be that hologram to Yaz. It's if we spent a lot of time doing the mystery stuff with Yaz, Dan, and Professor Jericho, just trying to figure out, okay, when's the world gonna end? When do we need to get to and find the date? Spoilers, it's next Sunday. Because that's when the episode's doing. I actually kind of like that. That's, a fun little, ooh, it's really happening in the real world. I like when Doctor Who kind of does that. But, like, Mandip Gill especially gives a really good performance here. Like, Yaz isn't really a character who has a lot of character, but this series in particular, she's really been allowed to shine just through giving her some focus. Like, and kind of doing it, she's trying to be like the Doctor, but not as far as Clara did, and not as much of a bad thing. Moreover, she's just trying to do what the Doctor likes to do, is help out and find other things. Now, there are a couple things here that could be seen as a little queer-baity, which I think is a little iffy, especially if some people take it that way, which, I hope they don't. I hope that doesn't happen. But, like, them traveling the world and just having all these interactions was a lot of fun. And I had such a good time just watching this happen. And it was really fun. Professor Jericho and Dan have a very nice double act. The scenes on the ship, especially, I didn't quite like the scenes with the Hermit. People are saying it's like Choji in Planet of the Spiders, but it's a bit of weird comic relief that doesn't quite work for me. But that's fine. Eventually building up to, like, actually giving us an explanation as to why Joseph Williamson is here, mainly because his tunnel somehow has been leaking time, and he's actually been wandering through different time periods and trying to figure it out on his own. It makes his appearances actually feel a lot more connected to the main narrative, and retroactively puts them very nicely into some good threads. It's really, really nice, and it makes his explanation. And we build to a really good cliffhanger of Sontarans invading and attacking them in the hub before they can even get back to 2021, while the Lupari shield is breaking. Everything is converging, and it's on Earth, which is very, very nice. There's universal stakes, but, I think setting it on Earth and focusing on Earth, and honestly some of the characters that we do kind of care about, is actually really important in making this work. And making the story function as a story, which I don't hate. I quite like that as just our idea for what the story's trying to be, and it's really good. It doesn't but if this was just given most of the episode along with the unit stuff, which I'll talk about in a moment, we would have had a really solid follow up. We would have. And I think, honestly, with the way they're going, you could probably easily cut the Doctor stuff out and not even show it. I think it might be one that... It might actually be better if we just saw the aftermath and never got a definitive answer. This isn't really putting mystery back into the Doctor. We're getting the definitive answers. like, that's another reason why Long Barrel worked, is that, yeah, the Doctor may be a reincarnation of the other, but the big point is may. We never get that definitive answer, and there's still things that don't add up and things that sort of contradict. And also there's the separation that the other is genetically different from the Doctor enough that he's a different character with a different life. It's much more like a father and son sort of dynamic between these two characters. Whereas this is just the Doctor but more. And it's like, okay, why would we want that? Like, are we going to do a prequel series? Which is like, I don't honestly know. But the other good stuff is Unit. We see the Grand Serpent from a couple episodes ago sort of having his hands in the creation of Unit, and everyone keeps trying to say that he's going to be the Master because he's, Master-like, and he, uses these snakes that just burst out of people to kill them whenever he doesn't sort of get his way, and he sort of manipulates the world around them, which is kind of, it's interesting, but it's not perfect. And, that could be great. That could be interesting. And he's really, really charismatic. I don't think he's going to be the Master. I think that would actually kind of be the lazy bit, because I think, just as a character, he's been given basically his own sort of presence and arc, and I think making him just another incarnation of the Master would probably cheapen that. We don't need the Master to be everywhere. And we know Dewan's Master is coming back because we saw, that big Master props box. That might actually not be in Flux. That might be in one of the specials, which could be good. It's definitely, something where the big problem is we're building things together, but also we're just asking too many more questions. Like, the history of Unit was great, and, like, it sets up Kate's appearance in the finale, which is, I think, really good. It's a shame that we kind of ruined that Kate Stewart is back in the last episode's Next Time trailer. If she was just revealed in that one shot, that would be just a great talking point. Like, and they kept her appearance so secret. It would have been really, really, really solid to see her there. But yeah, it's not normal. And then, this new character. You have new characters and old characters, and I think I like them fine-ish, but there could be, just a little more work done, I think, to get rid of the Doctor here. We don't need all these exposition, Chibnall. It's where you're the weakest as a writer, and I definitely don't like it. Like, you have so many other interesting things going on. Why this? It's not important. It's not the thing you want to be focusing on in the story. You want to have the Doctor. You want to have the Doctor not here. It would be a really good setup. My friend Marcus Cotton suggested this might be doing a 4-2-6-part story style, and it kind of feels that way. It just feels like the Timeless Children's stuff isn't important. I think what could have easily been done is that, like, if we just came with the Doctor and she had her memories back at the beginning of episode 6. And we got maybe some answers that might have worked better, but, like, in a sense, it's literally just here's again, it's the big problem of Timeless Children. Here's more exposition and stuff that just doesn't quite work. It's not the worst thing ever, but it's not good, and it really drags down what could be a really solid episode. But as it stands, this is probably the weakest episode of Flux so far. Like, it's the first definitely to dip below average. I'm thinking like 4 out of 10. Mainly because I just really like the other two plots. But yeah, it's very much a mixed bag, and that is such a shame. So, but that kind of wraps up my thoughts. So, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? I especially like to know if you really like this episode. Because and if you like the Timeless Children stuff, if you can explain to me why, because I don't quite get it. It doesn't put Mystery back in the Doctor. And it does sort of simultaneously make her and not make her a Jesus figure. But leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and join me next week when we talk about the finale, the big one, The Vanquishers.